Hi everyone! In this video, we are going to be learning about strings. A string is another data type that is frequently used in programming. We've actually already worked with strings in the first video, but in this video, we're going to go a bit more in depth. Let's review our goals. By the end of this video, you will understand how strings are different from numbers, how to find out the length of a string using the len function, how to combine shorter strings into a longer string using the plus operator, and how to break a longer string into a shorter string using slicing syntax. Let's open up our notebooks and get started.
A string is a sequence of characters wrapped in quotation marks. It can be as long as you want and can contain a combination of letters, numbers, and punctuation. For this example, I'm writing sentence equals, and then in quotation marks, I have 3 fluffy cats. And I'm putting the number 3 instead of spelling it out. Then I'm saying print, and then in brackets, sentence. And I run the code block, and I get I have 3 fluffy cats as my string. You can combine strings by using the plus operator. We call this concatenation. Let's type sentence equals ready plus set plus go. And add our print statement and see what we get. Oh, whoops, we got ready, set, go all jumbled together without any spaces. When we combine strings, we have to be very clear in telling the computer what to print. We have to remember to include spaces at least somewhere in our text, otherwise we get ready, set, go as a single word. Let's try this again. I'm going to go ahead and copy what we wrote in our last code block. That way I don't have to type it out again. Paste it into this new code block. And now I'm going to add spaces after ready and set. And this way the spaces will be included in our string. We can't combine integers and strings directly since they are two different data types. This will throw an error. Let's do month equals September in quotation marks, and then day equals 14. We're not putting quotation marks around that because that's going to be an integer. And then for our print statement, we're going to add a new string. Today is, and then plus the variable month, and then plus a space in quotation marks, and then plus day. And this throws an error, so let's take a look at it. There's an arrow pointing to line 3 where the print statement is because that's where the error occurred. Python is saying we have a type error, and it says must be string, not integer. And that means the variable day is an integer value, and it can't be. It has to be a string in order to be combined with the other strings in this sentence. But we can concatenate strings to integers if we convert the integer to a string first. The function str converts given data types into strings. Let's copy what we wrote in the last code block and then paste it into this new one. And this time, in front of the integer 14, we're going to put str and then brackets and put a bracket after 14. That way, we're converting the number 14 into a string. Let's take a look at the first exercise. Given the following scores of a rock, paper, scissors game, print them out in a single string that looks like this. Player A equals 2, comma, player B equals 1. As a hint, we're going to have to convert the integer variables to strings. Go ahead and pause the video and give this a try. All right, let's look at a possible answer. Let's make a variable called result, and in it, put the first part of the string. Player A equals, and then a space. Then after that, we're going to do plus, and we want to add the A score variable. But remember, we have to convert this into a string first. So we'll wrap that in the function str. And let's print this, just to make sure we're on the right track with things. Okay, that looks good. So now let's update our result variable to include the rest of the string. Remember that plus equals trick we learned earlier? We can use that with strings too. So we'll do result plus equals, comma, space, player B equals, and then strb score. Run that again, and there we have it. We have the sentence.
We can sort of think of a string as a list of individual characters. For example, the string hello is made up of the characters H, E, L, L, and O. This is similar to how in languages, words and sentences are combinations of letters. We can perform some neat operations on strings like picking out specific characters. This is called indexing. To index, we put the position of the character inside the square brackets.
Let's make a variable called letters and have it equal capital A, B, C. Then when we do letters and in square brackets put the number 0, let's see which letter we get, the letter A.
Now you probably noticed that we didn't use the number 1 to get the first character of the string. This is actually super common in programming languages, where we might say that we have a string of length 3, but the first character is at index 0, and the last character is at index 2. In general, we say that the character at position n can be indexed using the number n minus 1. And you can think of it as saying how far away the character is from the very first character. The first character is 0 spots away from the first character, so it gets an index of 0. This is just the way that computers think. We can use negative indices too. They count backwards from the end of the string, but they start at 1 instead of 0. And if this seems a bit confusing right now, don't worry, you'll get the hang of it.
Using letters equals A, B, C again, let's see what happens when we do letters and in square brackets, -1. We get the letter C because -1 means we want the first character starting at the end of the string.
When we grab subsections of a string instead of a single character, we call it slicing. To slice, we need to specify two indices separated with a colon, where the first number is the start of the section we want to slice, and the second number is the end of what we want to slice. The first number is included in our slice, but the last number is not. So the index goes up to but not including the final number. Let's see this in action.
Let's make a variable called sentence and have it equal we are learning Python. Now when we say sentence and in square brackets 7:15, we're going to get a certain piece of that sentence, which corresponds to the word learning. And that's because this word is at position 7 through 14 in our sentence.
We can find out the length of a string using the len function.
Let's copy the sentence from the previous block so we don't have to type it out again. And when we paste it, we're going to add a print statement that says len brackets sentence. And this tells us that there are 23 characters in this sentence.
We can use the length function as a shortcut for determining the final index of a string. For example, we can use indices and the length to slice out the very last part of a sentence.
Let's copy that sentence again, and this time say sentence, and then in square brackets, 7, colon, len, and then in brackets, sentence. And that gives us the slice, learning Python.
If you want to remove characters from the end of the string, you can use a negative final index. Let's remove the exclamation point from our slice.
Let's paste that sentence again, and this time do sentence, and then in square brackets, 7, colon, -1. And that gives us learning Python, but without the exclamation point, because we put -1 at the end of our slice, meaning remove that last character.
You don't actually need to define the indices if you want the whole string. You can use the colon directly. Python assumes that if you leave out the initial index, that you want a substring starting right from the beginning, and that if you leave out the final index, you want a substring ending at the very end of the string. Let's do a few examples to see how this works.
Let's make a variable called letters and have it equal A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Now the first one we're going to look at, let's do print letters and in square brackets, :4. And that gives us A, B, C, D because we started from the beginning of the string and went up to index 4. For the next one, let's do letters and in square brackets, 4, colon. That gives us EFG because we start at index 4 and go all the way to the end of the string. Now let's do letters and in square brackets, -3, colon. We got the same thing as before, this time because the -3 means starting at the third character from the end of the string, and nothing after the colon means go all the way to the end. For the last example, let's do letters, and in square brackets, put the colon without any numbers before or after, and that means we want the entire string.
You can check whether a string contains a substring or a smaller portion of a string by using the keyword in. We can check whether the string does not contain a substring using not in. Keywords aren't used in the same way as functions, in that they don't have brackets for us to give input, but they are special words predefined in Python to work a specific way. You can tell if a word is a Python keyword when it changes color after you type it.
Let's make a variable called numbers and have it equal 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, but be sure to put that in quotation marks so it's a string. Now in our print statement, let's put 0 in quotation marks and then in numbers. And notice how in is blue, indicating it's a keyword. And this returns a value of true because the substring 0 is present in our bigger string. Now let's print in quotation marks 5 and then not in numbers. And notice again that not in, the keyword, is in blue. This returns a value of false because the substring 5 is in our bigger string.
Now that we've mastered strings, let's try splitting up the string into parts using the function split. The result of splitting a sentence on spaces is a list of every word in the string.
Let's type out sentence equals we are learning Python, like we did before. And in our print statement, we are going to say sentence dot split, and then open round bracket and close round bracket with nothing inside. Our sentence was split on each space, so we ended up with each word as its own substring in a new data type called a list, which we'll learn about in the next video.
You might notice that the split function was used a bit differently than other functions we've used so far. Instead of saying split and then in brackets sentence, we added the function to the end of the variable sentence with a dot, sentence.split. And if you're curious about why, here's an explanation. Functions like print and type are universal and can be used on all of the data types that we've seen so far, but some functions are specific to certain data types. Split breaks up strings into substrings, but we can't break up the number 3 or the boolean true. What would the components be? Functions that only work on one data type are used in a slightly different way. They're written after the variable being modified, and this is called dot notation in Python. And if this isn't clear, don't worry about it. All you need to know right now is that some functions are written a bit differently, but we will tell you when this is the case. We now know how to modify strings in different ways. Let's recap what we've learned. You now know how to find out the length of a string, how to combine shorter strings into a longer string, or how to chop a longer string into shorter strings, and even how to check for substrings within a string. This gets us ready for the next video about the data type lists. Thanks for watching, and see you then.